Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. So welcome back with us, everyone. Before we begin, I would like to remind again a few reminders. First and foremost, please mute or turn off your microphones and cameras when the speakers are presenting their discussions to ensure a smooth session. Secondly, if you have questions, please write down in the chat box, which will be addressed by the speakers during Q&A sessions. And lastly, we would like to also request all pre-registered participants to fill out the evaluation form later on for the issuance of certificate of participation for session 2. We will show you the link for the evaluation of today's program in the chat box before session 2 ends. All right, let us move on to our next agenda, which is the keynote speech by the Honorable Dato Architect Haji Hajidar Abdul Majid on the topic of the importance of Islamic principles in the practice within the built environment industry. We will then move on to Masterclass 3 session on the topic of Islamic principles in garden design by landscape architect Dr. Nur Hayati Ismail. And finally, Masterclass 4 session on the topic of housing design from Islamic perspective by Dr. Azhani Abdul Manaf. I will now pass the floor again to our moderator, Dr. Fauzia Hassan, to lead the session. Please welcome.
Thank you very much to our MC, Ms. Fatin Atirah Jamaluddin. Our next keynote speaker is a very well-known figure in the field of architecture and built environment of Malaysia. Thank you, Dato, for joining us today. It is an honor for me to introduce Dato, whom I believe need no introduction. Dato Architect Haji Hajidar Abdul Majid graduated in architecture, majoring in urban studies and conservation from Portsmouth Polytechnic, United Kingdom in 1972. He started his architectural profession in Brighton, UK before joining Urban Development Authority UDA in Kuala Lumpur as architect and deputy director. Other involvements include as architect advisor to Kuala Lumpur City Hall, member advisory council for national culture and honorary council for the Republic of Maldives in Malaysia. He has been active in the Malaysian Institute of Architects and was He has been active in the Malaysian Institute of Architects and was PAM president in 1985 until 1987, and also president of ICOMOS Malaysia from 2013 until 2020. In education, he was an adjunct professor at the School of Architecture, University Putra Malaysia. Hajidar has been in private practice since 1978 with a variety of projects, including 14 masjids and musalla, the conservation and restoration for industrial courts, Infocraft Center, Historic Kuala Lumpur Museum, adaptive conservation of former colonial British residence to a boutique hotel, Karkosa Srinagar. For his involvement in conservation and restoration, he was awarded the Penguin Prize by the Norwegian government in 1985. He was conferred Darjah Kebesaran Sharafuddin Idris Shah DSIS by Duli Yang Maha Mulia Sultan Selangor Darul Ehsan in 2009, and Darjah Setia Tuanku Mukhris Yang Ahmad Gemilang di STM by Duli Yang Maha Mulia Yang di-Pertuan Besar Negeri Sembilan in 2016. Over the years, he had presented more than 70 papers and are included in his recent published autobiography, Hajidar Journey in Architecture. For his outstanding achievements, he was bestowed the PAM Gold Medal Award in 2012 and LAM President's Medal in 2017. Please welcome the Honorable Dato Architect Haji Hajidar Abdul Majid to deliver his keynote speech on the importance of Islamic principles into practice within the built environment industry.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh dan selamat petang kepada semua yang hadir. Before I proceed with my keynote address, let me take this opportunity to thank USIM for inviting me to give this keynote address on a topic which is close to me, but neither am I an expert on it. But all the same, I wish to share some of my thoughts and observations with regard to the state of the built environment especially in the context of our country, Malaysia. So for today, I have deliberately structured the keynote address so that it will be able to reach the very basic understanding of fiqh or fiqh in the built environment. And that the topic given to me was the importance of Islamic principles in practice within our built environment. Islam provides, and I wish to suggest that I will read from the paper I've prepared as my little legacy in my journey with regards to the built environment. So first thing first, Islam provides guidance for the living in the world with an abundance of knowledge on subjects covered since the classical Islamic world of the 8th century. And they range from the sciences of medicine, astronomy, engineering, fine arts, architecture, landscape gardens, literature, and many more. The Quran, introduced in the 7th century, is the most fundamental and complete guide and principles in life for all mortals. Being a humble Muslim architect, I wish to declare that I am not absolutely knowledgeable on the Islamic knowledge, yet I genuinely wish to share some of my experiences, thoughts related to the importance and significance of fiqh to the built environment, and inshallah, some of the observations may be of some practical value to the listeners and participants. What I wish to share is that the Quran and the Hadith are the true sources of guidance in Islam. This is why Islam possesses the universal value, and in that sense, even subscribed by non-Muslims for all the humanistic Islamic qualities and perceptions. The word fiqh or fiqh is an Arabic term meaning a deep understanding and total comprehension in our process for gaining and applying knowledge based on the teachings in the Quran and the Hadith of our Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Hence, fiqh is a key aspect of our life on earth. Such values and qualities, when understood, shall and have provided much answers to most issues in our life. The quest for knowledge is perpetual and a never-ending process. It is to learn and experience, and to experience and learn. And this is how the spirit of fiqh can be defined and understood. This masterclass program is only a minute event within the total context of Islamic perspective for education and understanding during our brief and transient journey on earth to Akhirat. At the end of the day, we are all Allah's creation, and each of us possess the unique, differing aptitudes, abilities, and qualities to perform within Allah's prescribed intention and limitation in respect of our fitrah or taqdir. The Islamic historian Ibn Khaldun has described fiqh as knowledge on the rules of Allah, which concerns the actions of persons who owe themselves to obey the law respecting what is required, wajib, sinful, haram, recommended, mandab, disapproved, makruh, or neutral, mubah. Defining knowledge. Universal knowledge can be acquired within the local, regional, and global context. As the saying goes, seek and we shall always find knowledge. And this is shown in this diagram that I have structured, quite similar to what you have seen in the earlier presentation, that knowledge, be it local, regional, or global, has its sources from various subjects such as anthropology, religion, culture, education, performing arts, governance, knowledge of management, cuisine, conservation, which Nurul referred to just now, environment, the sustainability, and technology, and languages, and the history. And all this universal knowledge is available to all of us, irrespective. Knowledge is also the key component to human values, awareness, endeavors, and achievements in civilization. All historic facets of life are very evident within some of the images I have included below. Among them is architecture, as seen in the fine works of the Masjid Cordoba in Spain, the landscape work and the sensitivity in terms of relationship between the environment and the built form in the Alhambra Palace, medicine and sciences, where a lot of documents and graphics have been produced in the 8th century, the study of the astronomy and the documents of travels and literature are all part of the so-called ancient but equally valuable Islamic golden age of information, such as law, I've listed here, education, law, theology, philosophy, metaphysics, epistemology, mathematics, natural sciences, engineering, social sciences, healthcare, commerce, and a lot of others, including architecture and landscape. So the built environment is our best reference and testimony in the evaluation of any community's achievement. It may be regarded as a common topic, but the built environment bears many significant results by the hands of a variety of contributors responsible for its current and ultimate contextual existence, for better or for worse. This subject may appear obvious to some people, but then again, the obvious have often been understood, misunderstood, overrated, overlooked, abused, and sometimes can be very deceiving. All intellectual, creative, and physical contributions must therefore be thorough and comprehensively considered before taking any action, because the resultant built form shall affect everyone and everything, regardless. However, the resultant environment may also be changed for the better or be deemed successful as a potential source for greater appreciation, delight, joy, sustenance, enhancement, and be a rightful motivation towards better human existence. However, on the contrary, if decisions were rushed, ill-considered, and then poorly applied, the built environment could result in a major environmental disaster which cannot be easily corrected, rescued, nor reinstated within a short period or even a lifetime. The damage and scar shall be permanent and remain forever, as evident in some of the current effects of global climatic change. Therefore, when planning and reviewing for the built environment, it is important and pertinent that all parties involved in the decision-making should be from amongst the best informed and knowledgeable on the basic principles of development with specific conditions for care towards the quality of the existing and the intended new environment. Decision-making will have to come from the best and the most sensitive of professionals to ensure that the intended positive results, effect, and synergy towards sustaining the existing environment. Today, as we have organized ourselves, the task and responsibility for sustaining and improving the built environment lies squarely upon the shoulders, hearts, and minds of those involved through their respective and noble professional disciplines. An ecologically balanced of high quality sustainable environment can therefore be the ultimate declaration mission from this masterclass, and to be the challenge for all these professionals that may be listening. It forms a deep-rooted fundamental basis and inherent commitment from architects, planners, engineers, landscapers, agriculturalists, industrialists, politicians, economists, administrators, environmentalists, and others. In whatever form, the resultant built environment shall be of profound influence on the macro and micro socio-economic qualities of any given society. In the Malaysian context, let's come closer to home. Records have shown that entire natural habitats and urban fabrics have been devastated or removed due to oversights, negligence, and/or the biggest culprit, greed of human pursuit, in the false excuses and justification for economic progress. This is unfortunately a case of human weaknesses and fallacy. Local microclimate have been affected and modified by bad decisions. Examples are in the cool Cameron Highlands, Fraser's Hill, Bukit Maxwell, and Gunung Jerai areas, where the environmental temperature has risen simply because of deforestation, intense agricultural development, changes in the eco-balance, and natural drainage affecting downstream environmental conditions of flash floods and landslips. Lessons must be learned by all from past environmental disasters, such as the Highland Tower collapse in 1993, which was and still is within a designated forest reserve and catchment area, where the natural water passage was denied by the project development, and subsequently, after 15 years, nature regains with great losses of life and property. Other recent reminders have subsequently occurred in the vicinity of the Klang Gate Ridge, Bukit Tabor, and elsewhere in the country. These callous and bad decisions may initially appear innocent, but the damages are often irreversible, as the negative elements would, like cancer, spread and continue to further cause other similar destructions and pollution, which, if unchecked, will ultimately result in a total ecological destruction. This was seen in a couple of weeks back in the Cheras area. However, let us not despair, because the same problems can be viewed from an indisputable yet stronger Islamic perspective, as contained in the teachings of the Quran, the Hadith, and even some appropriate Malay proverb like apabila sesat, kita perlu balik pangkal jalan. Islam is most mindful of the artistic and creative potential of the human race, the beauty of living in harmony with nature, and caring of the need for heritage values of other human beings and civilizations, and even animals. In Islam, every person on earth is a custodian or a Khalifah for the environment. Our mission on earth is only, just again another reminder, only a transitional one to Akhirat, a passage of absolute submission to the expectations of Allah, the Almighty. And part of our ibadah or obligation is to seek knowledge, act upon it, attain commendable results, and be responsible and accountable for all our deeds and actions. All this must be done with simple clarity, honesty, and sincerity. If human weaknesses were factors contributing to the environmental failure, then the human spirit must be further reinforced and strengthened through education with comprehensive passion, understanding, and the application of our absolute obligation as spelled out in the teachings of the Quran. The code of conduct and hierarchy of personal and community values are aptly defined in the Islamic teachings as shown in the graphic below. The one on the left talks about a personal relationship within a community and the spaces that has been created and defined as personal spaces. And the other is the concept of planning in Islam, a similar graphic as the one that you have seen in the preceding session this morning. And so, as a reminder, I would like to also highlight verses from the 3 surahs often quoted, and I think was even quoted earlier by some of the speakers, 3 surah of the Holy Quran, which I personally deem to be the most relevant reference to the topic of sustainable built environment from the Islamic perspective. Surah 10, Yunus, verse 14, refers to the role of human beings as custodians of Khalifah on earth, with responsibility and accountability for the sustainable management of the environment. Don't forget, we are all accountable for our deeds, irrespective as to whether it is uncovered or punished on earth. Then Surah 21, Al-Anbiya, verses 16, refers to Allah, all Allah's creation and provision on earth is purposeful and must therefore be protected as an obligation and gratitude to Allah. And the third quote is from verse 41, Surah 30, Allah's observation of human destruction, such as mentioned earlier, instability and pollution caused by mismanagement and greed, hence the need to constantly review our deeds, repent, and refocus. Okay, in conclusion, I wish to reiterate that the profession of architecture in the built environment can be described as a gratifying career. And Alhamdulillah, I have done it for the last 50 years. It deals holistically on the humanist aspect of existence that requires skillful balance and due respect to all existing and new built forms within the natural environment for the sake of continuity, identity, and appreciation. The creative skill, knowledge, conviction, and ability to translate from an abstract existence to reality with honesty may vary from person to person and may be subjective. However, with passion and sincerity of the people involved, the result, inshallah, can be most fulfilling. Architecture can therefore be described as the physical product of a series of complex intellectual mental decision process, inspiration, and influences from an abstract idea to its physical reality. It represents and reflects the true socio-economic achievements of any given community. Over time, if the products were significant and relevant, then they can be positively quoted and classified and elevated as a work of art and architecture. Otherwise, they remain classified as mere building forms. Furthermore, the definition of Islamic architecture is special and more complementary and inclusive because it involves other intrinsic and intangible values, passions, theological considerations, discipline, and sense of purpose as contained in the revealed doctrine of the Quran. Islamic architecture is therefore a total interpretation of the human needs in our transitional passage of life on earth. Hence, as a reminder, three essential elements of harmony and balance must therefore be inherent within our built environment, and they are the honesty in intention, physical in its realization, and universal in relevance and appreciation. Quite similar to what Nurul talks about the 5 values earlier. Last but not least, architecture and the built environment is founded upon the acquired and need for sharing of knowledge in the arts and the sciences based on human interpretations and common sense. The key, therefore, is in the understanding the importance of Islamic principles in the built environment. The opportunities and challenges are all present before us, and the secret is not difficult, but can be found by first learning them well, then understanding them well, and finally applying them well. Sekian, terima kasih. Wabillahi taufiq wal hidayah. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you very much to the Honorable Dato Architect Haji Hajidar Abdul Majid for your wisdom and sharing on the reality of the built environment industry out there for us to take heed and act upon to improve it in the future, inshallah. Now, I would like to open for the Q&A session. If you have any questions, you may ask at the chat box or ask directly to the Honorable Dato Architect Haji Hajidar.
Right. Yeah, it's do I have to read that first? Let me read it. Yeah, any comments on why there are so... Sorry?
Dato, you want me to read the question for you?
Yeah.
Okay, right. So there is a question from Mr. Ismail. Salam Dato, based on your long and colorful journey of experiences, do you have any comments on why there are some local authorities or federal authorities sometimes were giving excuses of denial or refuse to acknowledge that they were late to take action. For example, recently landslide tragedy in Cheras, where the residents were already informed the local council about the ground movement, but yet no action taken until it has caused death.
Yes. So, okay, the Cheras incident is yet another classic example of the lessons we never learn. You know, I've made mention just now to the Highland Tower collapse, for which I was one of the investigators, and we disclosed a lot of findings. But until today, we have not seen the published findings for us to learn from. So until we change our attitude, things will be as it was, and it will continue to falter the way that we have been going for the last. In the course of that investigation, what was very eminent was under the local building bylaw, the Acts, local building bylaw Acts, and the authorities and local authorities. The local authorities have the authority to approve or disapprove plans, but when there is a disaster, they are not responsible. So we did suggest that there must be authority with responsibility. Unfortunately, local authorities by law are not responsible for any disasters, if I have to say that. Hence, it is not very clear, and that has to be addressed. So it's been what, almost 20 over years, and we are still having this. And I did read about the residents complaining about the Cheras incident, that they have for last year complained to the authorities. But again, there are other administrative excuses, such as the lack of budget and things like that. So here is one opportunity through this masterclass that I told Nurul when she invited me. I said, okay, let this be my remark, could be my last remark with regards to this idea of being responsible in the built, in the what do you call, in the delivery of the built environment and in approving. So everybody has responsibility. I'm informed that among the participants today are people from local authorities. I wish you would speak up when you go back after today and share this. You know, otherwise we'll just be repeating the same mistake over and over again. I think I better stop there, otherwise I'll get into trouble.
Okay, Dato', we have another question from Ms. Nur Faiza.
Yeah.
Okay, the question is, who can make changes to make fast decision? I'm hoping the people in the system able to take fast action.
Okay. The chief executive of whichever organization is responsible. The buck stops with him. You get what I mean? If it is the Datuk Bandar is responsible. If it is the Yang Dipertua is the responsible. Now he cannot say that I got to wait for my department to do the study and give me a report before I can act. No, he has to come down into and tackle the issue together with the people that he wants to. He needs to help resolve issues, you know, with due respect, because this is why sometimes the high turnover of leadership is one of our negative points in this country. Every time there is a change in leadership, there is a change in emphasis, and there is an opportunity for the new individuals to express his or her preferences in order to leave a legacy. But unfortunately, it doesn't work that way. There must be continuity and focus. The intention, as Nurul put it, and I have also put it, the intention must be, nawaitu, niat tu apa dia? That is important. Do you want to serve the people or do you want to serve yourself? I don't want to go there. I'm not trying to accuse anyone of anything, but if you are a public servant, as the word means, public servant, you serve the public, not the other way around. Sorry to say. Maybe I'm overcritical, but I think I've kept it for too long, and I think I do it now because, at the end of the journey for me. Yeah. Okay, so that's able to take action fast. Yeah, we need to build. Yeah.
Right. Okay. Is there any
Serving
question?
the public. That's it.
Is there any other questions from the participants? You may ask Datuk directly. Also, put it in the chat box. Okay. We will be waiting for until. Okay, we have another questions. Okay, right, from Ms. Aina Suhardi, Dato, is it possible to revisit the building codes to integrate resilience in buildings towards preparation of disasters?
I think it's being done. For example, because of the recent effect of the Sumatra earthquake, I've read statements saying that they are going to review our building bylaw to make it earthquake proof and things like that. So by all means, do it. Prepare before it happens, because it's a matter of time, and because nature is like that. It will spring a surprise upon us, but it has given various hints. For example, if we refer quickly to the Cheras incident, the weaknesses of the hill slope was seen much earlier. I think about a couple of weeks earlier they saw, and I think there was an attempt to do a survey before it finally collapsed. So sometimes nature will overtake the human indecision. So the hope is there. It's forever. We need to improve all aspects of the control on the built environment constantly. You don't have to wait for a disaster to relook, because everybody has the time to relook at it, and don't just get excited when a disaster happens. We must be excited before the disaster happens. Does it make sense? I think it does.
Okay, Dato.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. Thank you so much, Dato. I think that's the end of session for session 2. Right. Alhamdulillah. Thank you so much, Dato, for your time. We will now have a break session for 5 minutes before we continue to the next speaker. But if you have questions for Dato, please wait for the final Q&A session.
Bumi yang tinggi
Welcome back. I hope everyone are recharged and in high momentum to continue with today's program. Moving on to our next agenda, we will have Masterclass 3 session on the topic of Islamic principles in garden design by landscape architect Dr. Nur Hayati Ismail, and Masterclass 4 session on the topic of housing design from Islamic perspective by Dr. Azhani Abdul Manaf. Before we invite our speaker for Masterclass 3, let me introduce her short biography. Landscape architect Dr. Nur Hayati binti Ismail is a senior lecturer in the Department of Architecture at the Faculty of Engineering and Built Environment and task manager, Center for Sustainability and Serenity C4SS, University Science Islam Malaysia. Accredited with a landscape architect professional acknowledged by the Institute of Landscape Architects Malaysia, ILAM. She obtained her Doctor of Philosophy from Universiti Kebangsaan Malaysia in the field of architecture, Master of Landscape Architecture from Universiti Putra Malaysia, and also has a Bachelor of Science in Architecture distinction, University of Malaya. It has made her considerable experience in the fields in which she's involved. She's also a researcher for Negeri Sembilan Heritage, collaborating with the Negeri Sembilan Museum Board to study heritage houses and heritage landscapes in Bandar Diraja Seri Menanti, Negeri Sembilan. The study of heritage house design, especially houses in Negeri Sembilan, is her area of expertise, as well as the field of preservation and conservation of heritage houses. Please welcome landscape architect Dr. Nur Hayati Ismail to deliver her presentation on Islamic principles in garden design.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillahirabbil alamin wassalatu wassalamu ala asyrafil anbiya'i wal mursalin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Thank you, moderator, Dr. Fauzia Hassan, honorable keynote speakers, Dato' Architect Hajida, lecturers, guests, ladies and gentlemen. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. And very good afternoon. Oh, sorry, I'm sharing my slide. You see my slide?
Yes, yes.
Alhamdulillah. Assalamualaikum and very good afternoon. I am Nur Hayati Ismail. Allow me to share a knowledge with the title of my presentation this afternoon is Islamic principle in garden design. Okay. Okay. This is the content that I will present for today. Yeah, of course, we want to know about what is garden, definitions on a garden. Second chapter is Islamic garden, the origin, chronology, the concept. And the third chapter is key features, principle, and element in Islamic garden. That's water element, geometric structure layout, and vegetation. And chapter 4 is about case study, how we look the mapping about the case study in national mosque and also Istana Lama Seri Menanti. This knowledge sharing that will be presented because Islamic garden is getting less intention in the modern times nowadays due to the current trends that are more modern and a Western culture. Okay, refer to the keynote speaker just now, Dato' Architect Hajida. It's about Islamic and the Islamic landscape, Islamic architecture. And the presentation from the speaker, Prof. Madia Dr. Zain, and also Dr. Shala, Nur Shala, on the SDGs and Fiqh and urban design to for our quality of life, or like Dato' Architect Hajida said just now, we balik ke pangkal jalan lah, like Dato' said just now. Okay. So it is hoped that with the sharing of this knowledge, so that can identify the characteristic of Islamic garden and courtyards and how it function, comply to the Islamic principle. To some extent, can contribute for us to recognize, understand application in design, whether for ourselves, community, or for our country lah. Inshallah. Okay, before we go further, the first topic, we ask what is a garden design. Okay, definitions of garden design, yeah, it's very for the basic. Garden in public, actually garden in public places is defined as ornamental ground lit for public enjoyment and recreation. A garden usually affected by geographical conditions and are influenced by tradition, ritual, and the culture of civilization. Looking in another perspective, the definitions of a garden does not only depend on how it designed and physically look, but also the function that achieve the satisfactions of the user near it. Okay, refer to Han 2000. The meaning of placemaking means creating a place and focus on transforming public spaces to strengthen the connection between people and this place. As we can see the photos, it is an important place that humans have tried to manifest paradise onto the earth with Islamic design garden. Okay, there are various notable type of garden and courtyards that can be varies according to the place and the culture of the human civilization, such as Islamic garden, Malay garden, English garden, or Japanese garden. Okay, Islamic garden. Islamic garden is a landscape design that refer to ideology principle, employing certain physical element and concentrate on certain intentions. That is Islamic garden, the definitions. Okay, origin of we must know about the origin of Islamic garden. Okay, Islamic garden actually has its own attraction, where it is first mentioned in Quran about paradise in heaven. Refer to Z.A. Latif et al. 2016. But the paradise, giving the definitions of a space enclosed from the surrounding, suggests that it may be surrounded by a wall. This definition could also portray the aspect of a courtyard. Okay, the Islamic garden is known as one of the historical garden after the arrival of Islam as a religion in the 7th century CE. It is first recognized during the establishment of the Persian garden, as it claimed as the foundations for Islamic garden. The Persian garden is also known to become an inspiration to other few Islamic garden in the world, such as Mongol garden in Kashmir, Alhambra, and the Andalusian gardens. Okay, now we go to the chronology of the development of Islamic garden. Refer to the chronology here, the development of Islamic garden. During the pre-Islamic era in 5th century, Persia is one of the deserted area where water had become a limitation for daily domestic water supply. Okay, most of the addition of Islamic garden was originated from Persia, actually, where Islam first arrived in the 7th century. Therefore, much of the characteristic of Islamic garden from all around the world are inspired by Persian garden until 14th century, where the establishment of generalized and Andalus garden in Spain. The design concept of Persian garden is conceived from the essence of 4 elements: water, wind, fire, and soil. Okay. The applications of geometrical design, perpendicular angles and straight line with point and poles that made the landscape view as a focal point with large garden filled with the aromatic plant and evergreen trees. Okay. So continue to the 16th century until now. The garden have also influenced other parts of the world after 19th century, reaching Europe, where the concept of Islamic garden can be seen in the Royal Pavilion, England. They are some of the remaining of Islamic gardens, such as the Alcazar Palaces and the Alhambra, which is still preserved by the UNESCO World Heritage until now. Okay, what is the concept? Concept of Islamic garden. Islamic garden is a conceptual garden where the distinctive features are derived from the descriptions of the paradise in heaven based on the Al-Quran. The flowing water and the fruit-bearing trees are always specified each time in heaven is mentioned in Holy Quran. During the spread of Islam as a religion, Islamic garden has spread to another region as well. Andalusian garden is also one of the earliest garden that had succeeded in interpreting the concept of heaven from the Holy Quran in its garden. The concept of heaven that is clear in the Andalusian garden, it is display the sense of privacy and intimacy. Okay, they refer to the Nazia Ansari here, 2011, where he summarized truly what paradise is according to the Al-Quran. The main features and type of element like water element, geometric layout, and vegetation are taken from Al-Quran. Okay, we referring from the Al-Quran, referring to some verses of Quran that quotes the subject of paradise, including mentioning water. Water is very important, and a plant as a necessity for our well-being, such as a place of reward. A place of reward here, Surah Al-Tawbah, verse 10. This verse describes the reward that will be given to those who made good deeds on the earth, shall receive a garden of bliss with river flowing in it. Another one is filled with plant and fruits, from Surah Al-An'am, verse 99. This verse shows the importance of a garden that filled with various types of plants, that fruit can be used as food supplies and medical and medicine, for medicine. Right. Now, another references from Quran relate to the geometrical layout of the garden. The geometrical layout of the garden from Surah Al-Kahf, verse 32 to 33. From this verse, is clearly seen that water become the main element, that also act as an exit in the garden, where it also helped to carve the geometrical layout that emphasized in Islamic garden. From the illustration here, we can see two grapevines, top and bottom position. Between two grapes vine, they are a confield. The river, the blue color, the river water flow in the middle through all the directions. Okay, it's right. Another reference from Quran, from Surah Muhammad, verse 15. There are 4 types of rivers that flow in the paradise described in the Quran. In the middle, there is a garden as referring to the verse of Al-Quran that describe the place of reward. There is statement about river water that flow under it. Okay, another references from Quran. Some verses describe the placement of important trees to provide shade and suggest that they are trees planted that can be eaten. Among the verses that describe the placement of the tree, like Surah Al-Kahf, verse 10. But from Surah Al-Insan here, verse 14, this verse explain about the layout of the trees and arrangement. The arrangement according to the it high that does help providing shade to the people who pass through the garden. Okay, from this the characteristic and reference from the Quran. Some of the characteristic from Nazia Ansari, the garden that are appearing in the Holy Quran can be concluded as this: the flowing stream, the channel, the shades, not extreme from heat from the sun. The trees are so green. Trees like lotus palm, or we can refer for the climate tree, for our climate. Dimension of paradise, maybe likened to the width of the sky and the earth, and also can be eaten, freely eaten. So from the characters, we also look at the key features to get an Islamic garden design that follows the principles and element. Okay, we go to the key features, and key features for Islamic garden are the principle and element that form the character of the landscape design. Okay. Okay. Principle and element in landscape garden. In term Islamic does not rely solely on the development of pattern or structure, but the ambience of the garden itself is the pillar to Islamic garden. The environment that inspired the remembrance of God and principles that are represent within conceptions of Tawheed and Khalifah leaderships, environmental, jihad, fairness, the knowledge, and also, of course, the beauty are mentioned in the Holy Quran. So, referring to principle and element at any garden that implement identical to this value can be treated as Islamic. Okay, there are several principles that we can relate to the element and characters of the garden in Islam or Islamic garden. Okay, this one just listed that relate to the element and characters. First is principle of clarity. That means balance lah, macam is symmetrical. Among this principle, among the main principle of Islamic garden, it is orderly arrangement or balance, symmetry. Symmetry. A formal style is indicated from geometry shape, rectangular pattern, as a basic of the layout plan. Geometric shape in Islamic garden create a symmetrical, neat, attractive design garden layout, or aesthetic value, or the you can see the display in the layout. Okay. Next principle is principle of centralization. The main principle of Islamic garden also centralized lah. It use pavilion and pool element which serve as a focal point. Pool or fountain element placed in the center of the space with 4 waterways leading from the center pool, another pool, a small channel on the side of walkway to the perimeter. So we call it as a principle of centralization. Another principle is a principle of unification. Okay, the main principle of Islamic garden also lah, unification is a harmonious relationship between geometry, water, planting with architecture around it lah. Next principle is the principle of tranquility. Okay, Islamic garden prioritize passive activities aimed at giving serenity, harmonies, quiet, and beautiful paradise garden can help visitors to remember to Allah. For example, the element again, water, seating, street furniture, the light, the lamp. The functions of water, beside providing soothing, it also create satisfactions human in physical and psychological. For example, cooling the air, ablution, remembering Allah, and the garden of paradise in the Quran, creating an environment harmony, no noise from the outside, and of course to produce pleasant sound. Okay, another principles about the mystery or privacy, and this is also important from this principle. Among the principle in this principle is the privacy. Islamic garden are hidden and mystery like paradise garden. For example, the area of space or the park, the park isolated from the part of using shrubs, plants, or masrabiah. Masrabiah actually geometrical pattern from wood for the screening shading structures such as climbers plant, pagolas, gazebo, or any courtyard. In addition, provide shades, it provide privacy, relaxing for reading, and etc. The function of the wall actually to create a sense of mystery and privacy protection from the dust and so on. Okay, last for principles, planting, for the planting principle, plant principle, we need to have a relationship with nature or ecology or ecological friendly based on Islamic value, for example, urban design. The location and a city shall be environmental friendly and have a potential to control ventilation, heating, sanitation, and so on. Among the element of nature, the surrounding that give comfort to a city where water, field, forest, river or sea, culture and climate influence the creation Islamic garden and make it impact to suitable plant. The preferred tree in the Islamic gardens are shading trees, fruit tree, and a fragrant flowering tree. Okay. All right, we go to element in Islamic garden. What is the element, the important element in Islamic garden? We can see here the water element, geometric structure layout, and also vegetation. Water is one of the main element in Islamic garden that is potential source for Muslim to reminisce the existence of the Allah God it does not only provide use for the domestical, but also a symbol that I mean the function and connect the human and the God spiritually. Okay, water element, the important element. This is important features for making Islamic garden. There are various ways to use water element in the garden as purpose. For example, from the rainwater harvesting, that means the water element can use in the garden. So water features can give a good impact, not only the beautify the garden, but also the functions of, for example, function of the irrigation system lah, watering the plant, that help to water the garden, water supply to the human, to use for domestic routine, especially for use for ablution, for prayers. Some of the Islamic garden have the element of fountain, ponds that act as a cooling medium to the building around it. Okay, so it is important that design have a relation between man to man, man to environment, and man to God, to accomplish the term of hablu minallah wa hablu minan nas. So from the water element, the running water, motionless water, and also fountain is very important in Islamic garden design. Okay, water running. Okay, water running. For slope lah, for the water running. Okay. According to HAZA 2018, the use of contour or topography to flow water from the top of the hill to the bottom, because there is a part of garden where the water is also used as source of water for domestic use, but it main use for irrigation system, watering plant lah, watering system. So refer to figure shows that water features that took the advantage of its terrains to channel the water from the top of the hill to distribute around the city, besides providing aesthetic value to the garden, more to function. Okay, motionless water. Okay. Motionless water features is also necessary in the garden to create a serene environment that leads the people contemplate and reminisce. The pool itself act as a reflected agent, mirroring the mirror the blue sky surrounding architecture, plant, the soul of a person that looks into it. This figure, we can see these photos, shows the tranquility that the pool of Shalama Gardens emit by mirroring the highlighting the vista of the architecture that can be seen at the end of the evergreen and shady trees planted alongside of the pavement around the pool. Okay, so water in the pool on flat ground can imitate like a mirror, where it reflects the surrounding garden. The meaning of the first point, contemplate and reminisce, to reflect and remember the God, remember Allah. Yeah. All right, and fountain. Fountain deems as a regenerate, as a factor that contemplate with the management of water, where the water is used when there are people in the garden. Okay, for example, the courtyard of the Lion, Alhambra courtyard, located in the Palace of the Lion, is a water clock fountain that should water both way when the shadow cast on term as reminder of Zuhur prayer time, and the water that circulate around the fountain is hygienic enough for the ablution. Okay, with being stated, it provide a very mechanism that use the element of water provide a bigger impact on its function than just merely beauty feature in the garden. Okay, refer to the geometric structure layout here. Inspired by the design of Chabak. Chabak means four garden in Persian Urdu. Okay, usually it takes a form of rectangular or square with a stream. You can see from the plan here, dividing overall layout, smaller pattern could reach up the number of 16. Then design features consist horizontal plane, the level of topography that are being altered into terrace, and it organized according to hierarchy, symmetry, line path, and how the trees are planted to produce vista and avenues. The Chabak design indicate that the garden is divided into 4 sections by water channel that represent 4 rivers mentioned in the Holy Quran. The water channel become a part of irrigation system that water the section in the garden, thus providing the balance look between 2 natural elements of water and earth when looking from the plant. Yeah. Okay, geometric structure layout. Some of the involved Islamic garden use straight street pathway network, which are always perpendicular straight line, and it is coordinate with the axis of the garden to divide the garden into small section. For example, this one in the layout, the pattern, symmetrical geometry pattern, simple geometry shape. Islamic garden aim to achieve that serene environment from the clean environment of vegetation, symmetrical section that is divided by water channel, the pathway, and centralized pavilion become a marker to the center of the garden. Okay, vegetation. Refer to the figure here. We can see the straight axial pool with fountain, the shady trees that are planted on the both sides in Iram Garden, Shiraz, Iran. Okay, the placement of the trees and plant are arranged in, we can see arranged in hierarchy to create the harmony between the hardscape and softscape, so that it would not overshadow the prominent element in the garden, and also help to emphasize more it exists. Okay. Similar to the water element, the plant tree, the plant and the tree in the garden that become the second most important aspect after water being considered the first. Also, intention in providing the benefit to the user and the surrounding. Not only does the trees used in the Islamic garden help providing shades, coolness, but also act as a food and also medical supply in general. Okay, even the planting of plant that often planted in certain order are determined based on the geometrical layout of geometry layout of the Islamic garden. Okay, from the example here, the example of plant that are mentioned in Quran and Hadith, more to aromatic plant, become one of the most well-known softscape used in Islamic garden for multiple purposes. The aromatic shrub, sometimes planted in geometrical layout, plant aromatic shrub that could sometimes from a maze and are also planted in a linear with the pathway. The aromatic plant are said to be useful, sometimes useful for the culinary and for the medical use. For example, here the plant that are Artemisia, made for the antiseptic, lemon or citrus for the appetizer, basil, thymus, and also crocus and saffron. Saffron for medical use like asthma, remedy for the smallpox, tumors, and cancer. Right? Okay. Another, this one is more for the fruits, fruit like fig, olive, cucumber, dates, and pomegranate. We call it delima line, used for the anti-parasite agent. Okay, so from example can be eaten that offer medical use. Okay, we go to the chapter 4, last chapter. The case study. This case study is to actually identify application that can be used as a guide or a reference for the Islamic garden in Malaysia. One of the building that we can identify is like building National Mosque Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia. Okay, from here, we can see the large pool, covered walkway, porosity, connection with both sides, and the important features in the making Islamic garden in this mosque. We can see the dynamic use of water element in the garden is established into the physical design, pools with water and a fountain. So we can refer this, the design has the relationship just now between man to man, man to environment, and man to God to accomplish the term of hablum minallah wa hablum minan nas, the running water, motionless water, and also fountain. Okay, National Mosque, from the from these photos and the National Mosque tend to define the term of geometrical layout on shape of pattern of the ground building and the garden accessory and fountain, more rather than show the layout of the garden. That is the garden of National Mosque still follow the geometric shape, but it does not look very much actually, because user will look more geometric on the pattern on the wall of the mosque, floor, or fountain. If you look from the plan, we do not see very features garden like jabak just now. Okay, next, the case study is Istana Seri Menanti, Negeri Sembilan, or traditional Malay Royal Palace in Malaysia. Actually, this monument monument, palace ni, monument building, representing the rich architecture, heritage landscape, traditions and expertise of Malay. So this case study of this old palace, we call it old palace, just to share a little bit of study regarding the heritage landscape that has been made, and there are some similarities with the Islamic garden. Okay, so from these photos, the design landscape found some similarities on the element Islamic landscape, such as geometrical layout, the pattern, the axis, the rhythm and harmony of Islamic garden, which show a sense of welcoming. Okay. Okay, from the geometrical layout and pattern, we can see the morphology studies have found that some plant and vegetation have been cultivated since the very beginning. The uniqueness of this palace landscape is that designed according to Malay garden, which is planted according to zone, such as the front yard, or we call it front compound or halaman depan. Halaman depan in Malay, side yard, backyard, halaman depan, halaman sisi halaman belakang. The trees planted are shady trees, edible plants such as Sambupagan citruses, or we call it lemongrass, or Sambupagan nardus, fragrant lemongrass, belimbing, belimbing buluh, pandanus, curcuma longa or turmeric, and other medical plant for the compound surround the this old palace. Okay, some plant. Okay, this one, the sketches and plans. Some plan has been made and analyzed for the actually for the purpose of maintaining the identity of Malay palace with Malay garden landscape character by the Islamic garden. As in this sketch lah, this one the sketch for the idea for restore the original plant and tree, as well as the identity of a traditional plant, such as just introduce traditional or rare species from Negeri Sembilan itself, like Syzygium polyanthum. In Malay we call it daun salam. Daun salam is a type of leaf that often used in cooking as a flavor enhancer. Limpato fruits, we know as susu, buah susu kan, a category of rare fruits with scientific name Prinia limpato, buah limpato. The hard to find and almost extinct fruits, but it is popular and favorite in the Negeri Sembilan traditional cuisine. Okay, so therefore from the descriptions and analysis of Islamic garden, it can be concluded that Islamic garden are mostly focused on the three important elements, which are water that play the most important role, the vegetation, and the geometrical layout that has been practiced since the earliest Islamic garden. So the principle of Islamic garden as a reference for making garden design, this principle can be used as guide, can be applied to be the identity of the area or spaces according to the genus loci or local area or our climates. Okay, in conclusion, it is clear that every element in Islamic garden plays an important role in achieving the functions of contemplations and reminiscing of the one God, Allah, beside providing them the aesthetic values from environment that it creates with the architecture and nature, ecology and nature itself. All the aspect that covers the function, aesthetic value, spiritual concerns are found in Islamic garden. I think with that, end of my presentation. Thank you for being here today. I really appreciate that you took the time to be here and listen to my presentation. Thank you. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, and thank you very much to landscape architect Dr. Nur Hayati Ismail for sharing with us the chronology and history of Islamic garden from 16th century until 20th century. Other than that, your presentation also brought new insights on the concept of Islamic garden that we can plan to implement some of your ideas in our garden designs. Next, moving on to our next speaker for Masterclass 4. Dr. Azhani binti Abdul Manaf is a senior lecturer attached to the Architecture Department, Faculty of Engineering and Built Environment, USIM. She has joined USIM recently in April 2020 upon completing her PhD in Built Environment. Prior to joining USIM as staff, she was under the fellowship program under USIM since 2015 to pursue her PhD. She successfully completed her PhD in International Islamic University of Malaysia, IIUM, in 2019, where she specializes on housing from Islamic perspective, especially on visual privacy of Malay family residing in terrace housing in Malaysia. Academic-wise, prior to her doctorate study, she has completed a Bachelor of Architectural Design in 2006, and after that, Masters of Architecture in 2010, both from Royal Melbourne Institute of Technology, RMIT Melbourne, Victoria. She also has working experience as an intern architect from Hijaz Kasturi and Associates, as well as graduate architect from Group Studio Design Architect after completing her master's. Currently, she is actively teaching in the department and carrying out research related to housing and special quality from Islamic perspective. She is also currently carrying the role as postgraduate coordinator for the faculty while being an active member to the Mikbah Research Group. Please welcome Dr. Azhani Abdul Manaf to deliver her presentation on housing design from Islamic perspective.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Thank you so much, Madam Moderator, Dr. Fauzia. I'll be sharing my slide. Is it okay, Madam Moderator?
Not okay, Dr. Dia.
No, okay. All right.
Dr. buat slideshow.
Okay. Saya start sajalah.
Alright, okay.
Okay, Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Thank you so much again to Madam Moderator for the introduction. Alhamdulillah, I am very thankful today. I hope everyone is still with me to be giving this opportunity to share on this session entitled Housing Design from Islamic Perspective. So I am Azhani binti Abdul Manaf from the Architecture Department from USIM. Okay, inshallah, so let's start. Okay, so for my session, I'll be sharing a bit about issues with modern housing in Malaysia as an introduction, and then to introduce the concept of housing from Islamic perspective, and then next, how can we apply this in our modern housing design today, and lastly, a conclusion, summary and recommendations. Okay, so I think the keynote speakers, the honorable keynote speakers before this and the speakers before this have beautifully set up in terms of explaining about the bigger picture of the Islamic building principles that now leading down to my session. And then inshallah, in this session is more about housing is like a smaller picture of it, and in that we'll be able to learn in terms of how it is applied, I think. Okay, so looking at an overview of issues with modern housing in Malaysia from Islamic perspective. Okay, so Muslim houses may come in a variety of forms and design based on local culture influences. However, there should be a similar architectural design language that need to be implemented and retained in order to fulfill these religious needs. So, for example, the traditional Malay house, it beautifully connects the passive design as well as the function based on cultural and behavioral norms of the occupants. So in there, we can see a merge between the Islamic building principles as well as the culture of the people. But for the modern housing today, it's like a step backwards. We have back down from the traditional Malay house, from the vertical housing. So in terms of it turning its back against all the sensitivity and cultural requirements, and as well in that the Islamic requirements such as privacy and all other important aspects. Okay, so nowadays builders are more concerned with quantity, density, and speed. So what they are aiming for is a one-size-fits-all mass housing that can house the masses. So in that, research have shown that when there are incompatibility between occupants and the housing environment, it will result in something we call housing stress. Housing stress is when the environment itself is not compatible. So in there we can see leading towards people doing modifications. If they cannot afford it, they will do whatever they can to adapt to the environment. And if modification does not work, they will then move to a new place. So that's part of the housing stress. Okay, so lack of sensitivity to cultural and religious aspect in the design of housing. So you can see there is a lack, it starts with a lack of sensitivity in the housing design itself in terms of culture and the context. So from community and family values to a more personalized values, which is more Western in nature. So from here, we can see before this hospitality to guests and community interaction is very important. It is very much encouraged in Islam. And as well as it is something that in the Malay culture, it is very much part of our fabric. But nowadays, research have shown that in terms of priorities, social interaction with neighbors are the least important. It is not important anymore. And hospitality to guests, it is still okay, but that comes with the cost of interruption with privacy of the family. Okay. So with that, we are seeing changing of values from before this to nowadays. And then it leads to the problem of adaptation, modification that making it worse. Modification without the backing of knowledge behind it can sometimes make the issues such as optimum visual privacy, and then with that natural ventilation, natural lighting, it can create more problem because when people cannot open their window and door because of the mirroring planning, so they need to close it. And so they need to resort to air conditioning, artificial lighting, and that in a way only because of one privacy matter, it results in all the other goals of SDG, sustainability, or the original design for the opening. It kinds of does not work. The original design does not work because of how the occupant use it. All right. So now I will go into the next section of this session, which is to introduce you to the concept of housing from the Islamic perspective. Okay. So the house is an important unit part of the neighborhood. The neighborhood is part of is a fabric that of the urban context of the city, and the house makes up create the neighborhood. So from the Islamic perspective, it is said that the neighborhood is the 40 houses 40 houses surrounding your door. So it is around that size, and the house, the mosque, wakaf, and the cemetery forms the 4 basic social elements in Islam. So in a way, saying that the house is very special. It is a family institution. It is a community institution. That is a very human and social aspect to the house from the Islamic perspective. Okay, so this diagram highlights the principles of neighborhood planning from Islamic perspective. So that it is the 6 key principles in the planning of a neighborhood, and with that, it is also the key principles in housing design. Okay, so first of all, there need to be a mosque. There should be a mosque that tie everything together, that centralize the neighborhood, and then that it should be a concept of space, or something we call alfina. Alfina relates to the social space. Back then, in the traditional Arabic city, alfina, it refers to the space abutting the street. Okay, so it shows a space abutting the street for it's like benches, benches where men converge outside the house. So in our context today, it refers to the playground for kids, or spaces, the spaces places outdoor, tables outdoor, kan bawang tu, spaces outdoor outside the houses for people to converge, come together in the evening. So that's called afina, the social aspect of it. And then the pedestrian walkways, in terms for pedestrian, in terms of safety and the width of it, and then circulation system such as roads and streets, cul-de-sacs in the housing area. And then 5th principles is privacy, which is one of the key most important aspect in housing, in terms of the height, orientation, density, and it affects all the other principles as well. And then lastly is the prevention of harming public rights. It is a verse, the principle is called La Darar Wala Dirar. The previous speaker, I think, have mentioned about this. That is, the translation is that no party or person to be harmed for another's benefits. So this about harm, about the prevention of harm, this principle is also very key and important from the Islamic perspective for housing design. Okay, so the phrase house in the Quran, there's a number of term for it, term or phrase for it, the word for it. So in the Quran, term bait and maskan are used in the Quran to refer to the house. So bait have been mentioned in the Quran like 70 times, and maskan like 12 times. And the term bait is used in reference to a house. It is mostly in reference to explain the hukum or adab, etiquette of how one should act in the house. And secondly, it also refers to a house as a form of rezeki, a blessing to his believer. So in Arabic, a house is also called sakan, which is derived from as-sakina, which means peaceful. Okay, so a house is an important and integral basic component of the city fabric, mentioned just now. So the Sharia scholar Yusuf Al-Qadawi defined the house as the place in which an individual protects himself from the climatic elements, in which he finds freedom from the restriction and pressure of society. And it is a place of rest for the body and relaxation for the mind. So the house from the Islamic perspective is very special and very important in that it is seen as the family institution, a place where you develop and integrate values to the children, a place where teaching and the reading of the Quran is carried out, and it is also where where a strong and successful family, it reflects it to a strong and successful society. Okay. So there are a number of verses in the Quran that tells about the house. I'll be giving a few examples. So one of it is Surah Toha, verses 118 and 119. So behold, in translation, behold, it is provided for you, O Adam, that you shall not feel hunger or feel naked, and you shall not thirst here or suffer from the heat of the sun. So this start to explain about the function of the house as a place of refuge and protection. Okay, another one is Surah An-Nahl, Surah 16 verse 80. It translates, it is God who made your habitations homes of rest and quiet for you, and made for you out of the skins of animals tents for dwellings, which you find so light and handy when you travel and you stop in your travels. Okay, so this part of the translation. Okay, so this verse start to explain the house as more than just shelter. There is a sentimental value to it, so it should be something of a refuge where you can hide away from society, place of rest and quiet and peace for a person. If it's does not work like that for you, that is mean it's not a house. So it's place of rest and quiet for a person. And then this verse has also starting to explain the material for the house, which should reflect the functionality, and it should respond to the place and context. The material itself should respond to the place and context of that time. Okay, in terms of hadith, so the Prophet says that house is the best place on earth. So the Prophet considers owning a house as a contribution of happiness. So he says, so this the first hadith mentioned of happiness, a good wife, a spacious home, good neighbors, and a good mount. Okay, so the hadith Ibn Habbah. And then the second one, God forgive my sins, make my house more spacious, and bless my sustenance. So more of a rizki, something like happiness and as a form of rizki. Okay, so this is hadith by Imam Al-Ghazali. So it says, having a dwelling falls within the necessary minimum that must be sought by everyone, since the lack of it causes people to be displeased with God and even sometimes to deny him. So it shows the importance of having a home. Okay. Okay. So in this next session, I will start to explain about the factors that result in the Muslim house form. Okay, so there are two very important factors that creates the house form. So it results from it's a combination of the constant and the dynamic. Right. So the constant factor is the urban and building activities subject to Sharia and building design topology. So it is the belief system of Islam. It is the teaching and values of Islam. It is universal, total, permanent, absolute. It came from Allah in the form of revelation in the Quran and the Sunnah. So this is the static, is the Sharia. It results in the legal system that creates the built environment. So that in a way create a static. As it is the static and the constant factor, that's why we can sometimes see a correlation, a unification, similarities between Muslim housing, vernacular Muslim housing in the world, because it ties back to the same Sharia system. Okay, it is the same Islamic principles that it adhere to. And then there is also on the other hand, there's a dynamic factor. So this dynamic factor is something that is always changing. It is decision-making process at the macro and micro level. So macro being the urban decision by the rulers, and micro decision by citizens at housing and neighborhood level. So micro decision is at the smaller scale, such as modifications, personalization by the house owners, but this study shows that it is at this micro level that we can see the majority of the Islamic principles itself. Okay, so dynamics such as influences of indigenous culture, climate, topographies, building material, talents, technologies, economy, accepted norms at community level, at the local level, and then it is the impermanent, the conditional and changeable. So it is something that's changed because of context, because of time. It changed with time. So so in a way, this says that there are unifying factors between all Muslim house form from back then until now. There should be. If it's not in the, it is not being in the original brick house, we can see it in the modified version by the house owners. And then there is also the dynamic factor, all these changes, all these factors like climate and trend and material and technologies that start to create varieties in the Muslim house in the world. Okay, so these factors I've actually extracted from the framework proposed by Basim Salih Hakim, 1986. Right. So this is again explaining about the factors just now. So the static, which is the Sharia, Quran and Sunnah, and which is the unifying factor of all Muslim house form in the world. And then it goes into the dynamic factor, which is the second filter, which is the cultural matrix. Very important. So culture is very important diversifying factor. And then it goes into the third determinant, which is modifying, which are climate, construction costs, and etc. And then it results in the house form, with a Muslim house form appropriate of that time. So it is very important for us to understand that at the core of designing Islamic houses is the goal to unify these two factors, the Islamic principles and the functional, which is what the trend today. So Islam did not instruct Muslims how to plan and build houses. There is no like explanation what a house for Muslim Islamic house should look like, but it instructs either directly or indirectly how to carry out number of tasks related to housing, such as privacy protection against non-mahram, respect for the rights of neighbors. Neighbors are very important in Islam. Implications of carrying out religious obligations, hygiene, peaceful coexistence with the natural environment, safety, security, recreation, modesty, all the other aspects. Okay, so one of the most important principles in Islamic housing is privacy. It is not to be like too narrow-minded to focus on this, but if it is not looked at, it will disrupt all the other principles as well, I mentioned just now. So this is a diagram, a framework by Bahamam, 1987, which is a privacy hierarchy of home in Saudi. So it starts to explain the domains of privacy in Islam. Okay, so it starts from the dwelling itself, the house itself, on the most outside house, the household or dwelling privacy, and it goes inside, female privacy, and then deeper inside is family privacy, and then lastly is the individual privacy, which is the self. So in terms of the people that is related to these spaces, so the non-mahram, the outsiders, the public, so it's outside the house, and then the male guests started to go into the boundary of the house, and then the female guests, and then family and relative, and then the self. Okay, so there is lots of layers. This is very different compared to the personal privacy of the Western culture, where the house itself, it can be very open, because there is no requirement in terms of aurat like that, but the house is very personal. So especially for traditional, for the Malay culture, actually it is more than a family. Community and family are both very important aspects of it. Okay, so from there, from the explanation about the factors of the static and the dynamic, we can, I'll just like to show a few example. So this housing, vernacular housing in Cairo, Cairo in Egypt. So the use of courtyards, and then the use of decorated screen, mashabia. So all these are a reflection of their culture, or the material of the time, and as well as of the climate. So the result of this is due, the result of this house form is due to a number of aspects. Okay, and then for our own traditional Malay culture and then traditional Malay house, so we can see in the example that you have the rumah bumbung perak, for example, the carved ornament wood, basically called papan cantik, to regulate the ventilation and penetration of the sun rays through fenestrations of the external vertical plane rather than its visual interest. So it is both as a medium to reflect the culture and arts and craft, and that is as well as functional for ventilation and sun shading, the elements on the house. And then despite being raised above the ground, there are also some of the Malacca house, it also have courtyards. So in the courtyards of the traditional Malay house in the Kampung Morton, like an example of this. All right. So for the traditional Malay house, we understand that there are, I just want to highlight that there are 7 elements that influence the existence of the traditional Malay architecture. So they are culture and behavior, religious belief, tradition, geographical and environmental conditions, local materials, weather, ethnicity. So it is a building that is architecture without architects. It is the craftsman, it is the buildman, it is the part of the community itself that build the structures. So it comes from the heart lah, you can say, right? So it reflects all the culture and then the locality of the place. So in here, just a typical plan of the traditional Malay house. All right, so it starts to show the layering. In fact, what we understand from Bahamam just now, the layering, you can actually see it beautifully in the typical plan of the traditional Malay house. Right. So now, from there, I will go into the next session of trying to decipher it. So how can we apply this in modern housing design? Okay. So a house should fit a Muslim just as a perfect dress comfortably fits a body. So it should be custom. It cannot be mass produced in a way. So Ibn Qutaybah, a Muslim scholar of the 9th Hijrah century, compared the house, as quoted by Afif Banasi, to a shirt, saying that just as the shirt should fit its owner, the house too should suit its dwellers. So in a way, the way a Muslim person dressed is different than a non-Muslim dress. So in that sense, we can see that with the house, if it is custom, it should look different than what the non-Muslim get. Muslim house. First of all, privacy. Visual privacy is most important in the design of a Muslim house. So in the Islamic housing, from the Islamic perspective of a design of a house, privacy is the core principles, I would say, to the design of the house. So it should be sensitive to the female family members of the house. So from here, so this is part of my study actually. So the terrace house being one of the most popular and mass housing in Malaysia, so we can start to see actually there are 3 parts to the house that we should be focusing on the aspect of privacy. So in the elevation, in terms of the facade elements, the main door, window, and gate, in terms of where it is orientated, the materiality of it, the height of it. So all of that is to take care of the privacy of the female family members of the house. And then in terms of when we go inside the house, especially nowadays that open planning is very popular. So in the internal elements are very important to create that sense of privacy hierarchy. And then even if we cannot create the privacy hierarchy or partition, then the things that the occupant cannot change, such as the position of the staircase, position of door that it should not open to public areas. So all those things we should be aware of those things. And then lastly, the external outdoor elements. such as the double skin facade, movable panels, the landscape trees, using trees as a barrier, and then the outdoor spaces itself, it is very important. The external elements is actually something that most often overlooked by developer, by house, not just by developer, but the house owner themselves sometimes when they are doing modifications. So, okay, so those are the three aspects. And then second, the semi-outdoor space. For example, the balcony. So in terms of from the Islamic perspective, the house should be as ample and comfortable as possible. So in that, it should be highlighted that effective lighting and ventilation is very important. So incorporating nature is appreciated. So before this, the previous speaker have highlighted about the importance of sustainability and greenery. So in all those principles is also carried through to the design, to the design of the house from Islamic perspective. So internal gardens and fountains have been part of the Islamic tradition for centuries. Garden is seen as a representation of paradise, running water and vegetation. But unlike Western gardens, they are for contemplations rather than recreation. So my study shows that for the use of the courtyard, because for the traditional Arabic cities, courtyard is very important because they need to be internalized of the sandstorm, so they need to focus inside. But it is also for serenity. The use of the internal courtyard is also the purpose of it is not just for purpose, not just for view. It's also to give peace of mind for the viewers. All right, and then courtyard. Courtyard is a common feature in Muslim houses, and it's a good way of providing natural ventilation, lighting, and a perfect location for private intimate garden. So a courtyard in the housing development, a courtyard in the house is very important. And then fourth is entry hall or entrance area. Okay, so this is the main door, the entrance area. Okay, so as you can see from here. So an entry hall is often found as a transition space from the outside inside. So there are multiple ways of designing entrance area to provide a little bit more privacy. For example, like an L-shape. So you can see an L-shape entrance, and then doors facing sideways. So that the main door itself is not mirroring to the neighbors, but pointing out, and not like this example. So it should point away from the main road in a sense. And then not to be mirroring, like this example. And then the door can open to a blank wall. That will also increase the sense of privacy to the house. Okay, so bedrooms. So houses usually have separate bedrooms for the parents, female children, and for male children. So children must respect the parents' bedroom, which cannot be entered freely without asking for parents' permission. Okay, so inside each one, the bed is commonly orientated so that the person faces the direction of Qiblat when sleeping on the right side, or at least in a way that the head points towards it. So this is as a tips lah. Okay, and then toilet, positioning of the toilet bowl. So I have received this question a number of times. Positioning of the toilet bowl, some Islamic scholars mention that it shouldn't face the Qiblat, nor turn their back to it. Okay, so Muslim scholars agree that, but they also agree that this does not apply when in modern WC, modern toilet nowadays, where there are walls surrounding. So this is more back then, right? So in a sense, it shouldn't be when you are seated or while you are on the toilet, you shouldn't be facing the Qiblat or turn your back to it. So it's like, it's either on the other side lah. So have running water, hygiene is very important from the Islamic perspective. So in modern days, hand showers are often installed next to the toilet. Okay, so praying. So when locating the unit of the houses and the bedroom, so it's important to take into consideration the Qiblat direction of the unit. So inside every Muslim house, there should it is encouraged to have a space for praying. It can be an entire room or just a little corner, but it's always away from the busy areas and ideally pointed towards Qiblat. So it can be a place for studying the Quran and also common, and it's also generally close to praying area, or it can be the same space. Okay. All right. So this is the hierarchical consideration for high-rise design for Islamic housing design. So in the design of Islamic housing, there are like the three principles that are very important. So we are always constantly should be aware to encourage the three principles, which are the man to creator, man to man, and man to environment. Man to creator being the aspects of a relationship with Allah, with God, and then man to environment is in the context and sustainability and energy, and then man to man is the social factor, which is with the human part of it. Okay. So the combination of that is in the creation of the Islamic housing. Okay, so in the design of a high-rise, so when we think about Islamic housing, so this is like an overview of it. So this is at the scale of one house, one unit. So when we thinking about the three principles of the man to creator, man to environment, and man to man, so we can see that there are a number of values that can be integrated into the single house unit. For example, the man to creator is preventing harm, which is security, providing privacy, prayer space, moderation, consider Qiblat orientation just for the unit. And then man to environment, so the house unit should be encourage passive design and openings, energy saving, climate and material. And then man to man, so in the house itself, it should encourage hospitality in the house, foster social interaction just between the family, protect privacy of female family members, and so the male and female children can be separated, enough number of bedrooms. So protect from visual intrusion, direct visual corridors from the outside. So to take care that the unit itself does not facing really common area, like it does not facing opening of the lift, something like that. So when that is like at the scale of one unit. And then when we zoom out to the scale of the one floor level of the housing development. Okay, so at the floor level, when you think about the three factors, so man to creator is a gate to prevent harm and privacy. So, but now the windows should not look, the bedroom window should not look out to the corridor, which is private to the public space. And then try to avoid that space or unused areas and spaces, try to integrate spaces that encourage members of Allah in terms of views. And then man to environment, sustainability, and pocket garden to encourage access to view of nature. And then man to man to encourage social interactions between the neighbors at the floor level scale, and then promote neighborliness and harmony, and also to integrate the idea of alfina, which is common area or pocket spaces at each of the level. Okay, and then at the residential block, the housing block scale. Okay, so the idea of the man to creator is to encourage to have a common surah or masjid, avoidance of harm, again about safety, pedestrian and main circulation by law, kindness in the design itself, and then man to environment, consider passive design to save resources, sustainability efforts, consider culture of place, about the design, and then consider orientation and position of the block in relation to site and the context. And then lastly, the man-to-man, to have special area to encourage outdoor activities and interaction between residents, facilities that fulfill the specific needs of residents, and avoid excessive in design or unused spaces. So what we can understand here is that it is really, Islamic housing is more about the values. It is a value-based design, you can see. All right, so going into the conclusion and the recommendations. So one of the main issue or main point that you should keep in mind is about the mirror planning of units. So this results in a number of issues due to this method of planning. planning the main door to be next to each other, and then the main door is facing each other neighbors, it results in a lot of visual connections. So not just from the front and then at the back as well. Especially that the most female oriented spaces like the living room and the kitchen and the bedrooms, those are where all of the openings are usually located for modern housing, for mass housing. So people will most probably will close their window, close the door. So this will create quite an issue in terms of the need for visual access and the need for natural ventilation and natural lighting. Okay. And then another issue or main point to keep in mind is the balance between thermal comfort and privacy. So it is very important to improve the thermal comfort using passive design strategy. And in this way, it is saying that we need to rethink the design of facade and opening. All right. So another aspect that is very important is about the idea of Alfina. This is the social spaces in the neighborhood. The social spaces that should be integrated in the housing development. So the importance of common areas or spaces within housing developments to socialize. For example, pocket of green spaces, benches, private social interaction area for ladies. It can be in the back lane or however it is integrated into the design itself. Discussion areas for men, playground for kids. So social interaction can actually be encouraged by providing the right spaces and facilities, can be dispersed at each floor and at the ground level and in the housing development. So more private female-oriented spaces can be integrated to the planning of housing developments. And then it's also important as a recommendation to integrate green spaces to improve biodiversity and encourage more green open space. For example, like pocket gardens and community gardens. Okay, so another issue and main point to keep in mind is the importance of porch or semi-outdoor area of the house. So study shows that family, they want to utilize more of their semi-outdoor spaces. They want to enjoy it more. So more privacy and a more sensitive design, especially for the female family members, it will allow them to spend more activity time in these semi-outdoor spaces. To bid family goodbye at the entrance, to hang laundry to dry, to play with their kids in comfort. So they want to use it more. All right. So in summary, just as a takeaway, take home notes. So is Islamic housing, housing from Islamic perspective, it is very much a value-based design. It is integrated with values. It is very organic and it's different than Western measurements. And for our Malay housing itself, even modern housing today, we can see the organic sense of it in terms of it, how people modify. It is different as the family cycle goes on. Okay, and then customs and accepted norms, uruf, are very important. To be taken into consideration is part of the design. And then what we should remember is that to not take into account Islamic sensitivity, to not take into consideration, it may lead to losing more goals. Because for example, visual privacy and the idea of openings is very interrelated. If we take away one element of the privacy, is actually will disturb all the functioning of the house and all the natural that you want to propose, such as the natural ventilation, natural lighting. It may lose that as well. And then Islamic values in housing, it sets a good benchmark of housing quality, not just for Malays, Muslim, but also for all the cultures in Malaysia, actually. Okay. All right, I think that's all for my sharing session. Thank you so much for the opportunity to share. Assalamualaikum.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you very much to Dr. Azhani Abdul Manaf on your presentation just now. Starting from the principles of neighborhood planning to the factors influencing house form, it is clear that the first primary filter is the Sharia itself, which is the Quran and Sunnah. Next, when it is integrated with other secondary factors, then this is what forms the house that is in line to Islamic principles. Now, I would like to invite the Honorable Dato Architect Haji Hajidar Abdul Majid, Landscape Architect Dr. Nur Hayati Ismail, and Dr. Azhani Abdul Manaf for the Q&A session. If you have questions, you can now ask the speakers directly or write down in the chat box, which will be addressed by the speakers during this session. All right, I will read the questions from a chat box. So the question is from Ms. Nurul Mawaddah. Assalamualaikum, Dr. Hayati. May I ask a question? Can we design organic landscape layout for Islamic landscape instead of using geometrical layout and pattern?
Okay. Thank you. Waalaikumsalam. Thank you, Nurul Mawaddah. Yeah. Normally, when we look at the landscape, we must refer to organic or flexible planning, right? In fact, we can combine with geometrical to see the unity, as in principle of unification. So, for example, for our front compounds or front yard, we can be geometrical design with tree arrangement to show the sense of welcoming, while on our left or right compound, halaman tepi kanan, can go to organic design because of for the edible garden or medical plant. So we can combine it. Is yeah, actually the answer is yeah, we can design organic landscape and refer to the Islamic principle, inshallah. Does it answer the question?
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Hayati. Okay, if there is any other questions from the floor. So we have Dato Architect Haji Hajidar, Dr. Hayati, and Dr. Azhani. So let's don't miss the opportunity to ask them. Okay, anything about this session? Okay, we're still open for the Q&A session. The participants can ask directly or write in the chat box. You may also ask questions in Bahasa Melayu.
Assalamualaikum. Boleh saya soalan?
Boleh, Mr. Rafi'i.
Okay. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My question is for Architect Hajidar. Okay, so basically, as a seasoned practitioner in architecture field, so what is, in your opinion, what are the values that the current student needs, current architecture student needs for them to practice in our industry, for us to make a change?
Okay. Let me put it this way. I've gone through 50 years of practice, and of course, over the 50 years, there have been a lot of changes, and we have to be aware of the various changes and readjust or reset into the kind of practice we need. For example, once upon a time, if you went into architectural education, the expectation is that you will end up as a practicing architect with your registration with the lembaga and so on, and that you'll be able to sign and submit plans to the local authorities. But of late, because of the divergence of activities as well as the complexity within the building industry, there are specialist architects, and there is the opportunities are greater. So the way I see it, in fact, this is what I've been trying to suggest to the various schools to look at, is not to encourage, not to discourage, but not to encourage that all architects who go through architecture education become architects. Today, if you look at the statistics available with LAM and PAM, you will see that there are more graduate architects available in the market than there are registered architects. Although we still need a few hundred more architects to serve the country as a whole, but the pandemic and other challenges have reduced the potential for work within the country. And amongst them, for example, if I just have to highlight to you, is that once upon a time, the registration and the practice of in this country is controlled by the citizenship requirement. You have to be a Malaysian citizen to be registered and then subsequently practice. But since the boom, there were exceptions made, and then now the exception is becoming almost a norm, meaning foreign architects are already working, a lot of foreign officers are working in this country, and sometimes using some of the local practices as their front and submitting person. So this is why we have to be, as someone said, you have to be streetwise with the kind of condition there is today. If you look at some of the more elaborate or landmarks within the country, they are not done by, unfortunately, they are not done by the local architects. Instead, they are done by foreign architects with the locals in close collaboration with them. And of course, the net effect of that is that foreign exchange, in other words, fees that could have been earned within the country has since left. So this is the kind of new norm that we have to address. And this is where education has to understand that it's not just design building. Anyone can design a building. But the thing is, will you be appointed as an architect? So this is to me, is a bigger challenge in terms of quite unlike when I got into the profession, there were a lot less architects available to serve the country. But today we have more architects, but there are more projects where the appointment and the involvement of local architects slightly has diminished. I won't say slightly, has diminished. So I don't know whether that answers your question, but I'm still hopeful that the architectural programs in the various universities will be able to adjust and focus on the real needs in this country, as opposed to just theoretical strategy of producing professionals, but they must be doing what you call credible projects. I think I'll stop there.
Okay, thank you very much, Dato'.
Yeah.
All right, thank you very much, Dato'. Dato', we have another question for you from Mr. Ismail. Salam, Dato'. What is your hope that might not yet achieved today, but you wish it to be materialized by future generation?
Oh, okay. I think my earlier answer also partly answers it. in the sense that I'm hoping, with due respect to all my colleagues and my peers who are in practice, the younger architects in practice, I'm sure they believe in themselves. But what I'm trying to suggest is continue to believe in yourself, and that you become a world-class architect and not just, as the saying goes, jago kampung saja, but you have to be very, not only creative, but you have to be very daring in the context of worldwide participation. You could be serving very productively in other areas, other countries, for example. The issue of exporting your professional services. I know of a fact that quite a few Malaysian architects are working abroad, in particular the Emirates, and some in Australia and in China and in Europe too. So I've seen that, those who had the opportunity to be trained in England and they're quite familiar with practice in England, they find it's easier to practice there than it is here. And I think they tend to earn a lot more than it is here. And past have encouraged such professionals to come back, giving various incentives. But from what I understand, some have gone back to where they have found their what they call their place for employment. So to the question, I don't think Shukr Alhamdulillah, I've done what I have done, and I do not wish for any more, but I wish that the profession will continue in whatever new form that it demands to make ourselves relevant as a profession. We should be building our own buildings. We should be designing our own buildings. We should be excelling in doing as much work as possible within the country, and if possible, try and export. Because I mean, maybe it's fate, but I think it was fated that as early as 1983, I did export. I think I was the first to export our professional services overseas, but it was through the need to design the national mosque for a country, which was the Republic of Maldives. And as described by the president when he appointed me, he says, it is not his doing, my doing, or anyone else's doing, except for Allah's will that you should be building our national mosque. And that's the kind of spirit that I wish we will believe in, And this is why when we serve, you don't question who you are serving and things like that. If it is of some good consequence, then by all means serve, So I don't think I regretted and wish to do anything more except to try and share our experience or my generation's experience, because I benefited from sharing from my predecessors, such as Dato' Isham al-Bakri, an eminent architect then, Baruddin Qasim, who's still alive, Hijaz, who's still alive. They are all my predecessors. So I've learned from them. I hope the current generation will learn from us, my generation. And of course, I am three generations away from the students that I meet. And Alhamdulillah, the quality of work these days and the competitiveness among students, judged by the various entries that has been submitted to PAM, for example, for the awards, is very, very encouraging. I do visit the other schools and see the kind of work that they do. And in fact, I look forward to come to USIM to have a look at the kind of work that you guys are doing there. so that I can give my, what's the expression? 2 cents worth of opinion and views, because it doesn't cost me anything to give an opinion, but it may be of value to you. And I've often said this, and I've even written about it, the fact that there were tutors when I was a student that I couldn't agree with, and I had a lot of arguments with them. But in later life, I discovered that a lot of the things that he said has some truth, and then became of tremendous benefit to me in terms of understanding the built environment. For example, looking at the built environment from the Islamic perspective per se today, as I mentioned earlier, is relatively new, and I did spend some time preparing the paper in the hope that even if I'm gone tomorrow, that paper is there, and somebody can take off from there and proceed and go further. Perhaps USIM, because this is your first master class, and you can, of course, take advantage of it. It's yours. After today, the paper I prepared is as good as yours. So you can use it as part of your curriculum and try and perhaps analyze and expand some of the observations I made. For example, somebody asked me today, did we learn anything about why are the local authorities not responding? Because that, unfortunately, is the local authority, because they work under bosses, you see. Nobody says anything. It's always top down or nothing from the bottom. But to me, a successful community and nation should listen to all aspects of it. Just because it is Islamic today, that doesn't mean the non-Islamic. In fact, when I made reference to the Islamic values, in fact, the most Islamic nation in the world today is di mana? Where is it? Where is the most Islamic nation in the world? It's New Zealand. It's amazing, isn't it? It's not a Muslim country. And we declare ourselves a Muslim country. A lot of the Middle Eastern countries declare themselves Muslim, but in terms of values and the teachings and the whatever we discussed today, I think others are doing it in a much more demonstrative and real way than we are in this country. Let's not go there. But if self-realization, I think all of us must ask ourselves, are we Islamic or not? In our life and existence in this country. Because ultimately, I once questioned actually my dad. I wanted to know why is this, why is that, and he says, you don't need to know. Jangan jaga tepi kain orang. Because one day you will die, he will die. He will answer it in his own grave, while you will answer in your own grave. So based on that, this is why we have to reinforce ourselves. This is what I make that reference of, bila sesat balik ke pangkal jalan, go back to the basics. We are Muslims, so let's have a look at the Muslim aspects and values that we should uphold, and then be answerable ultimately. So, okay, I think I better stop there.
Alhamdulillah,
Nanti
Dato'.
panjang syarahan.
Right, Dato', you are most welcome to come to USIM. But we have another question from Mr. Nazril Hardi to Dato'. Salam Dato'.
Again?
Again for you. Okay.
Yeah, okay.
Very popular. Okay. Salam Dato'. As an experienced practicing architect, maybe you have experience dealing with the issue I'm going to ask. When we say about Islamic architecture, most are focused on the physical appearance or the functionality of buildings. How about Islamic architecture in terms of the business side, the Sharia in contracts, payment terms, fees, tendering, fairness in the service provided, etc., etc.? Looking forward to your comment.
Okay, Panja. I tell you what, we can have a workshop on this. The thing is this, you have to ask yourself first, are you a Muslim? If you're a Muslim has lots of Islamic values that has to be understood and respected. This is why the topic itself that this masterclass have identified, fiqh, is very important, because the whole basis of our existence, my existence, your existence, and your other fellow human beings who are not Muslims is the same. You owe the right to look after each other, you know. So based on that, to me, you can reinterpret whatever known practice, such as the practice of architecture, for example. Professional fees. Professional fees is professional fees. You know, upah, that's the word. And what's the principle of upah? Is that when you ask somebody to do work for you, belum titik peluh dia tu kering, before the sweat dries up, you have to pay the person. Unless there is yet another agreement where you have a contract where you say, saya makan gaji 3,000 sebulan, so at the end of the month you dapat gaji 3,000. Theoretically, you should be paying every day, but you don't, because you modify it into a monthly salary. So practice and contract, all this you have to reinterpret, you have to understand. It's not rewriting, interpreting the Islamic, from the Islamic perspective. Kan? You know, you say, for example, a client owes you so much money. So over a period, when you ask for the outstanding fees, do you calculate interest? I don't think you should, because that is what's the word? Faedah, kan? Faedah. You don't apply interest, because interest is haram. So you don't. You say that this is the amount that you owe me, full stop. That's all. So there is no such thing as compounded interest, for example, due to the amount owing. So those are some of the things, you know, terms and tendering, fairness, or in the service provided. Yes, you can't be there forever. If you are appointed an architect as an office, the principal architect or the architects working in the same office need not be there all the time. If you have periodic inspection, yes. You have regular periodic inspection to update, yes. Even today, you can do site supervision online. You know, you can do site supervision. In fact, we practiced that during the lockdown the other day. We had drones. We used drones to just, you know, to get excited by the project and to try drone supervision, to literally fly over the project site to get the feel of the site. So you don't have to be physically there. And I had this unfortunate loss of one of my colleagues, for example. You know, he's an engineer. He traveled during the lockdown, and then finally he caught COVID, you know, and just the day before I was angry with him, and I told him, itulah degil. So aku kata jangan merayau juga. So in the end, he literally died 10 hours after I last spoke to him, because there's so much you can do, you know, and the project site will not run. If there's no activity at the site, the project site will not disappear. So you tak payah drive all the way north to Perak and south to Johor, wherever, to see the site. And all that, he sacrificed his caution. So anyway, that is just an example of Allah dah bagi kita this faculty. I refer in my book as the best CPU anyone can get, the brain. Allah has given us the, this Allah punya brand of CPU. It updates itself. It can carry so much, what they call information. It stores information, it analyzes information, it retracts information, and it applies the same information. Even if you acquired it about 10 or 20 years ago, it will recover and you can apply it today. So all this opportunity is with the guidance and assistance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, So to me, why worry about all this? You just focus on what you want to do. So ikhlas, and this is how it should be. I don't know. I don't want to twist the. There is no Islamic PAM contract. A contract is a contract, and there's no. I mean, let's not be too myopic in thinking just being Islamic will save us. No, you are a Muslim. There's no compromise on that. You are practicing Islamic values. So please, siapa nama tadi yang tanya? Who asked me that question?
Nazril, Datuk.
Huh?
Nazril, Mr. Nazril.
Nazril, Nazril. That's why I said fairness. You asked for it, huh? So I don't know. I can give you a long chat on that. Don't worry. All this is duniawi, as the saying goes. Kan? You just want to prove yourself. That's all. And then kalau ada rezeki, you terima. Tak ada rezeki, tak apa. Kadang ada hikmah dia. Sebalik. But you learn. And this is why I think at the academic level, there's no what's it called, compulsion to comply. It's up to you. You're a Muslim, you walk away as a Muslim, and you have to exist with non-Muslims, for example. So you apply, and if they appreciate what you do, as a good bonus point for the Ummah, for example, to see non-Muslims subscribing to your Islamic values, and in fact, I think that has been amply demonstrated in our country. For example, a lot of non-Muslims, they respect Muslim individuals, whether they're scholars or otherwise. And that's what education is all about. Be flexible, because all this comes from Allah. The information, the training, the skill, and all that. Okay, sorry. Nazril, thank you very much for that question. Panjang.
Okay. Sudah tak? Done?
Yeah.
Selesai dah?
Yeah, selesai.
Right. Alhamdulillah. I think that's the end of session 2. Thank you very much to all speakers and active participants. I pray that everyone have learned a lot from all the session today. It is our hope that you have learned today will not only be a hearsay, but embedded in everyone's heart for us to take action.
Alhamdulillah.
Improve our practice together for the betterment of our future work environment, inshallah. Now, I would like to invite our MC, Ms. Fatin Atira Jamaluddin, to continue the session.
Very much, Dr. Fawzia Hassan. Alhamdulillah, alhamdulillah. We have completed with the second or the final session of our masterclass today. So before we go to the end of the program, next, allow us to share part 1 and part 2 showcase videos of Mizan Home. So this is our humble example on how we have put in the application of the Islamic principles in a house design. This project was built in 10 days for the design competition and construction of a solar home called Solar Decathlon Middle East, SDME 2018 in Dubai. So this project combined both the researchers and students' effort in producing sustainable home prototype designed based on the Islamic principles embedded with sustainable technology. So do enjoy the showcase.
Go Malaysia. May Allah bless us.
Islamic Science University of Malaysia.
When talk about sustainable development, yes, it's about brain, it's about energy, but what we focus is also the balance between spiritual and also the construction.
Rumah Mizan Home ni adalah sebuah rumah pintar yang memerlukan pemahaman yang agak detail.
Syabas kepada tim Mizan Home kerana telah bertungkus lumus menyiapkan rumah ini pada hari yang ditetapkan. Jadi ini satu pengorbanan dan juga hasil yang sangat baik dan sangat berbangga kepada pasukan Mizan Home.
Inilah satu-satunya projek yang membuka peluang pelajar untuk memahami secara keseluruhan sebuah bangunan dibina dalam bentuk yang kecil tapi kompleks.
Saya menyatakan bahawa komitmen pelajar-pelajar Mizan Home, UTM, USIM sangat terbaik dan patut dicontohi oleh pelajar-pelajar yang lain. Mizan Home telah mendapat perhatian di mana pengunjung tempatan semuanya akan melalui Mizan Home kerana dia merasakan sebenar konsep sakinah yang diterapkan di dalam Mizan Home.
Saya pun rasa macam tak sangka lah yang apa yang kita orang usahakan selama ni dengan tim design buat lukisan kerja semua tu dah jadi benda yang betul. Rasa terharu, sedih pun ada, gembira tu, excited tu paling tinggi lah sebab kita tak expect kan benda yang kita tak sangka pun kita boleh buat benda macam ni. Tapi dengan berkat sabar, usaha, semangat student, semangat berpasukan tu, alhamdulillah saya rasa berbanggalah dengan tim saya.
Right, that was the end of the video. So I hope you enjoyed the showcase and be inspired by the prototype itself. And so finally, we'd like to request for the last time to all pre-registered participants to fill out the evaluation form for the issuance of the certificate of participation for session 2. The link for the evaluation form of today's program has been shared in the chat box. All right. And I would also like to express our utmost gratitude to our sponsors, Kelab Pembangunan Profesionalism Arkitek Kuala Lumpur and Selangor, USIM Engineering Sendirian Berhad, ARA Architects, Ikhtisas Planners, and Dr. Shamsiah Muhammad. And most of all, to all respected speakers and guests for your time and involvement to make this program a reality. So before we end our ceremony today, let us join for a photography session to record this memorable moment. So I invite everyone to kindly turn on your camera and we will have our photography session.
All right, come. Let's turn on all the camera. All right. So there are 3 pages here. Okay, let's waiting for all of our participants to turn on the camera. Wow, Professor Rifa is there. All right. Okay, there are 3 pages. Okay. Okay. 2 by 3. Okay. For the first page first. 1 and 2 and 3. Let's move on to the next page. Page 2. 1, 2, and 3. Okay, for the large page. 1 and 2 and 3. All right. Thank you very much. Okay, Fatin.
All right, thank you very much, Architect Azmi. All right, thus with the end of the photography session marks the end of the Masterclass Fiqh and Built Environment Program. So as a representative of this program's organization, I would like to apologize for any shortcomings, especially during the beginning of the program, since we had a little bit on technical problems during the first few parts of the sessions, but do forgive us for that. And may Allah bless all of us. Stay safe, everyone. Take care. Thank you very much, everyone.
Terima kasih.